If you're headed to Disney World or anywhere else that's not your house, we have some tips on how to feel a bit safer coming up on DFB Guide. Hey everybody, it's AJ for Disney Food Blog. All right, this is my story of what happened when I went to Disney World. Traveling right now is tricky and it can feel very unsafe. I went to Disney World to cover the reopening of the parks, and today I want to share what I did to feel safe when I was going there. Hopefully this will be helpful to some of you guys, or at least maybe a little bit interesting. Now, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It is a tough decision to go to Disney World right now, and it's not the best decision for many people for various reasons. But you know your family and your travel group, and you know if it's the right time for you to travel. Now, this video isn't meant to be an across-the-board statement of do these things and it's totally fine and totally safe for you to visit a major theme park right now. Rather, it is a video so you can know if you are going or considering going that these are the tips that I took to make sure that I stayed safe while I was traveling. All right, let's talk traveling. First up, you need to decide how you're getting there, driving or flying. If you're driving a long distance, there are potential hotel rooms and food stops to account for, plus just the time it takes. Can you take that time off of work? You may feel safer driving your own car than flying and visiting multiple airports, especially if you don't need to make an overnight stop. Now, flying is very cheap right now, so many airlines are running crazy deals, and you might be tempted to take advantage of those deals and forget that it may not be the safest option for you. Planes are generally good as far as air circulation and filtration is concerned, but social distancing is hard and it's definitely still a high-risk activity. Now, read up on the policies of the hotels you might be staying at, or if you do choose to fly, choose an airline that's enacting changes you feel comfortable with, such as blocking out middle seats, using new sanitation procedures, requiring masks, etc. Regardless of how you travel though, bring your masks and sanitizer and maintain safe social distancing wherever you can. I'd also suggest getting tested before and then after your trip, because depending on where you live, you may need to self-quarantine for up to 14 days after traveling, so take that into consideration when you're planning out your trip and stay up to date on the latest travel restrictions. I personally traveled from my home near Dallas, Texas, over to Orlando, Florida. I stopped in Mobile, Alabama at a wonderful hotel. This is not an ad for it, they're not paying me, but it's called the Battle House, and it's in Mobile, Alabama, right downtown. It was a lovely hotel, and I stayed there both on the way to Disney World and on the way back to Dallas. I was super nervous. That was the first time I was staying in a hotel since all of this started, and I did bring my antibacterial wipes, and I wiped down the entire hotel room, including all of the light switches and the door handles and the nightstands, the night tables. And so, most of you don't know this. Obviously, my dad does, who watches all these videos, but I used to be a hotel chambermaid, and so I know how hotels are cleaned, at least when I was a chambermaid, and we didn't always sort of wipe down with antibacterial wipes all the things in the room. I mean, we pretty much made the beds and we cleaned the bathrooms. So based on my personal experience, I did bring wipes and I made sure everything was wiped down. And I was real careful not to really touch too much that I hadn't wiped down. When I drove to Disney World, I stopped at a couple of gas stations, obviously, to fill up the car, went through some drive-thrus, and I always wore a mask, and I always wore a mask even when I went through the drive-thrus. And had hand sanitizer handy so that I could use hand sanitizer as soon as I got back into the car after doing whatever I needed to do to fill the car or go to the restroom, etc. All right, so once you get there, hotel rooms at Disney. Generally, I felt safe staying in a Disney hotel room because they're gonna keep it clean most of the time, but there are still plenty of extra precautions you can take to feel a bit safer. Same as the hotel I stayed in Mobile, which was absolutely lovely, like I said, and I know that they did a great job cleaning. Just like that in Disney World, I also wanted to wipe down all the surfaces, faucets, light switches, bedside tables. The TV remotes are actually cleaned and put into little plastic bags in Disney World with a little sticker that says cleaned on them. In Mobile, Alabama, I actually brought along a Ziploc bag that I put the TV remote in to use it. So let's talk really quickly about what Disney is doing in their hotel rooms. This is information they have made public, and they also note it in the rooms. They're steam cleaning floors between guest stays and cleaning all housekeeping tools between between rooms. High touch areas like TV remotes and door handles, like I said, are getting extra attention. And when I checked in, that TV remote was all wrapped up and sealed in a plastic bag. If you are staying in a Disney World hotel where the shower amenities are on the wall in the restroom, so they're not individual containers, those will also be noted as cleaned with a little cleaned sticker. And housekeeping has also been reduced to every other day. So it's just a light housekeeping. Extra towels and linens will already be in your room when you check in, but you can always request more. Now, what can you do as far as extra precautions? Like I said, wipe down all your surfaces. You can also bring your own pillow. Disney has their pillows double cased, but you might just want to go ahead and bring your own. That's totally up to you. I don't think that that's necessarily kind of in the CDC guidelines, but if it makes you feel better, you absolutely can. Bring that disinfectant spray, sanitize those things yourself, drawers, surfaces, your bag that just went through the airport. Spraying things down with Lysol definitely helps me feel a little bit safer. You can completely skip housekeeping if you prefer as well. That's what I did. I actually let the front desk know that I did not want to have housekeeping come at all. And I think there's also a little checkbox when you're checking in online that you can tell them you want to not have housekeeping come into your room at all. You can always still call them and ask for towels and whatever you need, toiletries. Housekeeping did knock on my door every day to see if I wanted garbage cans emptied and things like that. So they are definitely being very attentive to everything, but you can opt out of housekeeping and just call them when you need them. Make it a policy also to always take off your shoes as soon as you enter the room. Something else that I did personally was I brought several garbage bags, and when I was taking off my clothing when I got back to the room, I'd put it in the garbage bags and seal it up, and that was kept away from all of my other clothes. So I didn't just sort of put used clothes in with not used clothes. I put them in a garbage bag and sealed it up and made sure that those didn't touch anything else. And also took showers when I got back to the room each day. So that's something else you can do to sort of keep yourself clean and sanitized as well as your room. All right, so in the parks, bring multiple masks. We talk about this a lot so that you have options to switch out throughout the day, and make sure that all the masks that you bring fit within Disney's guidelines for face masks. You remember they've changed those a little bit, and they've increased what is required to make a face mask acceptable. And the reason why I recommend bringing multiple masks, there's actually a few reasons why. First up, different fabrics and straps or ties can be more or less comfortable for you. So a particular mask that's super cute and you really like can get really, really annoying after you wear it for a few hours because it's really pulling on your ears, or it keeps slipping down or something like that. So have a different style to switch out to. I always brought masks that had several different types of loops for your ears. I always brought ones that were adjustable, and I brought disposable masks as well, so that if the non-disposable masks got kind of too heavy, or they got too sweaty, or the loops were hurting my ears, I could switch to a disposable one for a little while, which feels a little bit lighter. Big problem with the disposable masks is that when you sweat in them, they are not absorbent. So then your face is just wet at that point. So there's pros and cons. And as the weather continues to get a little cooler in Orlando, I think you're gonna have a lot fewer issues with having to switch out masks because of heat or sweating. But you're definitely still gonna be careful having multiple options for those ear loops or those ties around your head. Another reason why I like to bring multiple masks is to be able to double up on masks when in enclosed spaces. So tighter fabric weaves on your masks and multiple layers can help to block out some germs, or at least give you more of a sense of security. Different fabrics provide different levels of filtration, though in the grand scheme of things, a mask does more to prevent others from breathing in anything you might be putting out rather than protecting you who's wearing the mask. Now, there are some N95 masks on the market, back on the market now, because they are not so drastically needed in hospitals as they were at the beginning of this whole thing. So you can actually buy some N95 level masks, which will keep you safer than those regular disposable masks or homemade masks. But there were a couple of times that I doubled up on my masks. I know I've talked about it here on the channel before when I was on the monorail. I really don't like how many people they're putting into the monorail cars, even though there's kind of a little divider. It does have several inches around it that are open, so I definitely added an extra mask on top of my regular mask when I was on the monorail, and in other places where I felt like I was just too close for comfort to other people. Next thing to note, make sure you know how to take off and put on a mask properly. You want to keep it from getting contaminated, so be sure to avoid touching the inside of the mask. Try to only handle it by the ear loops or ties and avoid putting it down on surfaces or just shoving it into a pocket. Remember to sanitize your hands before you take off your mask and before you put it back on. This is real important when you go to restaurants, of course, and restaurants should provide a little plate for you to put your mask on, but a lot of them aren't right now, so you may want to ask for one, or you can also bring a bag specifically for your mask to go into when you are at restaurants. Also, I do recommend to bring your own hand sanitizer. There's tons of hand sanitizer all over Disney World before every ride, after every ride. It's definitely around, but some dispensers will be empty and some might not be where you need them. So you may feel safer putting on sanitizer immediately getting off a ride versus waiting for the next sanitizer station. And also try out your sanitizer before you leave home. I definitely have my preferred brands now that I've had to use them nonstop. So I always had one of those little hanging carabiners with hand sanitizer on my camera bag the whole time I was in Disney World, and I used it quite a bit. Then I brought along a big sort of 12-ounce hand sanitizer that I kept in my hotel room so I could keep refilling the little carabiner bottles each day. Now, those antibacterial wipes, you're going to want to bring those for tables. Disney is real good about cleaning, but before you sit down to eat, you might want to give that table an extra swipe. Now, when you're in the parks, you must step away from other guests and remain stationary to eat. So find a secluded place to eat to feel safer, even if it means trekking a bit with your food. And don't forget, leave space between you and other guests. It sounds obvious, but in queue lines, it can be tough. If you're in a big group, take up more than one marker to help space yourself from another party. What we found is if you have 4 people, probably okay to be on one marker, but you might want to take up 2 markers instead of just one with 4 people, because once those groups start to grow, then you no longer have 6 feet in between you and the people next to you. And if you aren't able to socially distance due to a pinch point, have a map so you can see a different way to get to your destination. Another great tip is to arrive to the parks a little bit after the official opening time. We found when Disney World first opened that those opening times, that's when the transportation is super crowded. There's lots of people backed up. Everybody wants to get into the park when they first open, which doesn't make any sense because they're going to be able to ride everything, so it doesn't really matter. The only place where that's not the case, of course, is Hollywood Studios, where you have to be there at opening time at 10 a.m. to try to get that boarding group. And of course, there is a 2 p.m. time available to try to get that boarding group as well, but our recommendation is always to give yourself as much potential time to ride that ride, so get there at 10 and get that boarding group. That's the only time we would recommend arriving at the park when it first opens. Otherwise, just wait, just let all of those crowds go in first, and then you can travel on Disney transportation and get into the parks with no crowds at all because everybody's already in there. All right, so overall, follow the guidelines on safety. Be aware of your surroundings. Disney's doing a great job of following those CDC guidelines, but the people around you may not be. It's very hard, and this is what I found that I was shocked by. When you're paying attention to everything else that's going on, you can sometimes forget to be mindful of the new safety requirements that we have to pay attention to. And I found this multiple times. For example, I was in California Grill. I had to get up to go to the restroom. I completely forgot to put on my mask to walk to the restroom. And as I was coming back from the restroom, I realized I wasn't wearing it. And I had just broken a rule, and I had just potentially put people in danger because I'd completely forgotten. And believe me, I am very cognizant of what's going on. And I knew all the rules. I was terrified to travel. So it doesn't really matter how careful you are at home. When you're at Disney World and you're in your happy place and you're doing things you've done a million times but completely differently, it's easy to forget. It's easy to forget to sanitize, to wash your hands, to take a shower when you get back to your room, to put on your mask when you walk to the restroom. So even the most regimented traveler who's very careful can forget and make mistakes. And it was a huge realization to me that everybody else in the parks, everybody else in that restaurant was, even if they were working really hard at being safe, they were probably making mistakes as well. So all of us together making a whole lot of mistakes, that's a problem. So be aware, have someone else in your party kind of keeping an eye on everybody as well. We love the idea of kind of a designated safety person, especially if you're going to be drinking alcohol. Have someone in your group who's not drinking alcohol, who's keeping an eye on the rest of you to make sure that you're staying 6 feet away from people, that you're wearing your mask, that you're not forgetting to do those important safety things, that you're washing your hands, that you're sanitizing, etc. So instead of having a designated driver, you've got a designated safety person, because when you do start drinking alcohol, you do, lose those inhibitions. And for something that's hard to remember when you aren't drinking alcohol, it gets even harder to remember when you are. So that's another kind of little tip if you're in a large group and if you plan to go have a few drinks. Now, if you are feeling uncomfortable, you can leave. If it's too crowded where you are, double up on your mask and get out of there. If you're sitting too close to another party on a ride, talk to a cast member, see what they can do to move you. Disney World is relatively safe, and it may be safer than going to the grocery store, but you're not in your grocery store for 10 hours straight touching 10,000 different surfaces. Some doctors and nurses and contact tracers are touting the 6-15-2 rule. That's another thing to remember. If you're within 6 feet of someone for 15 minutes or more when they're infected and not wearing a mask, you're considered a potential contact for tracing and should self-isolate for at least 2 days. It's believed that you're most contagious for 1 to 2 days after you're infected, and you might not even be feeling sick yet. So do your best to not be within 6 feet of anyone for longer than 15 minutes while you're on a plane, in Disney World, or in a restaurant, etc. Remember that you can still carry the virus while not showing any symptoms, and that's why it's important to get tested after any high-risk activity, and that definitely includes a trip to Disney World. Everyone's definition of safe is a bit different, so find what makes you feel comfortable and do that. Don't worry about looking silly with 10 bottles of sanitizer or 8 masks in your park bag. And for some people, feeling safe right now means not going to Disney World at all. We get how hard that can be to not be able to plan your big family reunion or special trip. But Disney is still going to be there when all this is done, and we hope we're able to bring a little bit of Disney and our tips and tricks to you guys, whether you're traveling right now or not. Overall, on my trip to Disney World, I felt very safe, but like I said, I was very, very careful. And I was absolutely mortified when I made mistakes and forgot to put on my mask or forgot to sanitize, and it made me really nervous. Another important piece of information, if you have anxiety about it at all, then it's probably not time for you to go. Only you know what's right for you when you should go back to Disney World. And like I said, I felt safe, but I was real careful. I took a lot of precautions that some people would probably say were absolutely crazy. But to me, that's what I needed to feel safe. And when I got home from the trip, I did self-quarantine. I isolated from my family in my home. I wore a mask until I was sure that I was not going to infect anybody in my family. So I thought that was very important for me to let you guys know that I wasn't just careful when I was in Disney World and traveling to and from, but also when I got home. I do have family that I'm concerned about, wanted to make sure I didn't infect them. Now, I did not get sick, thank goodness, but that could have just been the luck of the draw. But those are the things that I did to make sure that I stayed safe when I was in Disney World, or at least tried to make sure that I stayed safe while I was in Disney World. Thank you guys for listening. Thanks for watching. We've had some requests for this video, so I hope this has been helpful to some of you. I know a lot of you are headed to Disney World and you're really excited to go, and I'm really excited for you. But please stay safe, and please be careful about the other people around you as well. Make good choices. And if it's not the right time for you to go, it's absolutely okay to decide to stay home. As always, this is AJ for Disney Food Blog, and we'll see you real soon.